I'm Dr. Sigal Clifton. I've met a bunch of you already. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm glad that you're getting all this good information all in one place. I am both the fertility expert and the medical director of the egg donor and surrogacy program at InVia Fertility Specialists. Vicki runs the show for me. So she coordinates all the third-party reproduction. So she's the go-to person, and she is the liaison between the surrogates and the egg donors and the fertility procedures that have to be done. And so there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that hopefully, if everything goes well, you guys don't have to see, but that we take care of so that you can sleep at night. We don't have to. So in these capacities that I have, I'm involved both in the process of helping you start a family and also in this for screening from start to finish, from picking the egg donor, picking the surrogate. You really want to make sure everything's perfect with the health of the surrogate, and then up to the transfer of the embryo that will result in your child. There are lots of ways that you can start the process, and I think the question a lot of people have at the conference is, where do I start? And there are lots of ways to start. You can start by talking to lawyers, you can start by talking to surrogacy agencies, you can start by finding a medical center to coordinate the show, and it's really all up to you. Now, I have a bias because I'm a physician and I run a medical center, but in a way, your part of the process is not medical, except for the medical process means everything. It makes all the difference between success and failures. So in a way, you can come to the medical center, pick the egg donor, we'll help you find the surrogate, and then we coordinate everything else from there. We're very rigorous in our selection of egg donors. We have many, many applications, and Vicki fields them all initially. It only sends the ones that are sendable by way. But any given year, we every year look back at our statistics. Between 3 and 4, some years, but not usually 5% of egg donors that start the process are actually selected by us. And we look at their medical history, we look at their reproductive history, we look at their genetics, we have them meet with a psychologist, we meet with them in person, and if there's just something that just doesn't feel right, I don't take them. Like if I wouldn't want her to donate an egg to me, I say, you know what, no thank you, but thank you. And so in the end, we have very high quality egg donors who have very high success rate for us in creating families. So I always said the first step is really to come in, get to know your doctor or your surrogate center, wherever you go first, and just make sure you feel comfortable, because this is a relationship that's really important, and you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with your group of support people from the start. Once you're committed to this form of family building, there's one thing that I say is you kind of have to get out of the way. You need to make sure that the sperm sample is good. I think it's always nice to, when you're kind of at the very early part of your cycle, of your journey, to do a semen analysis. And you might want to check a semen analysis for if you're coupled, for both of you, because you want to know what you're dealing with. Most people have perfectly fine sperm, not everybody does, but that may help you decide which way you want to go, and it's just something you want to know at the outset. It's very easy. You have answers in 48 hours, and then you move from there. The next step then is finding an egg donor and also looking into a surrogate. We work with several very wonderful agencies of surrogates in Chicago, and the process is really streamlined. It's nice if you can pick an egg donor and a surrogate in the same state. It saves a lot of cost for you. It saves a lot of coordination on the back end that you don't see. And it's very nice, as you've heard from several of the speakers, particularly the lawyers, to deliver in Illinois, because we have very good laws that protect you, so that in many cases the intended fathers or both of their names are on the birth certificates, and that's a very good thing. And that's portable, obviously, to any other state you go to. So then how long does the process take? The planning can take 6 months or 2 years, depending on how selective you are and depending on what you're looking for, and so on. But once you pick the donor and the surrogate, and then you're just at the point of coordination, in, I would say, 8 to 12 weeks, we can get to the point of transferring the embryo. Now, this process, this journey, is all about decisions. And what are the decisions? So I think the most important thing is the egg donor, because this is the person who's going to be contributing genetics to your family. You're going to have a baby that has the genetics forever of whoever you pick. Many people pick someone anonymous for various reasons. You don't have to explain to anyone, you don't have a relationship with this person, and so it's sort of nice moving forward with that. On the other hand, some people want someone they know so that they, you know what you're getting, or at least you think you know what you're getting, right? If it's someone related to you, then you're getting some of your genetics back. Obviously, it goes without saying that if you're using a genetically related family member, the other partner has to provide the sperm. And that's nice if you only, let's say, want to have one baby and you want to have a contribution from both of you. That's certainly an option, and we do that. And then you have to decide if the sperm is coming from one of you, or if you're partnered from both of you. And if from both of you, you have to decide on the order. So for example, we've done cycles in which we use one egg donor, split her eggs in half, and each of the intended father's sperm is used to fertilize half of the eggs, and then we transfer one embryo from each of those batches, from each of your sperm fertilized eggs. That's an option, so that if you end up with twins, each of them will have a contribution from each of you. You can mix the sperm together and then fertilize the eggs with this mixture of sperm. If sometimes people don't want to know who the father is, that becomes a little tricky with surrogacy laws, because you do need to know that who is the genetic father for the birth certificate, at least in Illinois. You can also fertilize half the eggs with each of your sperm and then transfer one embryo at a time. That's certainly an option. You'll need to also decide then what you want to do with those embryos in terms of testing them. So like I said, not all embryos are created equal, and while we should, in an ideal world, every embryo we make is perfect, about a third of them are not. And by not perfect, I mean having too many or too few chromosomes. There is now technology that's quite accurate to screen the embryos to see that they have the exact number of chromosomes that we anticipate. The benefit of that is that when you transfer the embryos into your surrogate, you have a very high chance that a pregnancy will be established. You have a much lower chance of a miscarriage. About 20% of pregnancies in general miscarry, even when everything's perfect and everyone's healthy. Much lower if you test the embryos in advance. And also, if you have extra embryos left over and you freeze them for later, you know that they're very high quality embryos. It does add cost, but sometimes it makes sense to add that cost because you do less transfer cycles to the surrogates. So that's just something to think about. And then the final decision, which I think is quite important, both for the health of the baby or the babies and everybody's sanity, is whether you transfer one embryo or two. And you really have to ask yourself where you are in life and what your aspirations are, and do you want to bring home two babies at the same time? It certainly means a lot more time up front. It means that you'll need a lot more help. It means that one of you may need to slow down in your professional aspirations while the babies are in need of extra help. And it also means that there's extra risk, because twins can be born early, can be born with more complications. It's certainly something to keep in mind. And then the other thing to keep in mind is if you transfer two embryos, you don't always get two babies. Sometimes only one of them implants. And then, like I said when I was speaking to the larger audience, the hardest part of the whole entire process is waiting the 10 days to know if your surrogate is pregnant. You think the hard part is picking the egg donor and the surrogate and coordinating everything and talking to the lawyers and all the expense, and that's all very involved and very difficult. But the hardest part is that waiting. And you need to figure out what to do while you're waiting. And you also have to think what to do if it doesn't work. You need, in a way, to have in your mind the sense that you'll go through this more than once. Give yourself 2 times. If it works the first time, which most of the time it does, then you'll be happy. But I always think you have to have a plan B emotionally, just in case it doesn't work right away. I can't emphasize that enough. As part of the process, you'll meet with our psychologist. It's really important because there are things you may not think about early on that you're going to want to think about later. For example, if you want to use a known egg donor or an anonymous egg donor, and if you use someone who's known, that person's going to be part of your family, or at least someone you know forever. And not only that, but the egg donor is going to know that she's donated to you. You have to decide if you're going to tell this to the children. You're going to have to decide what happens if they find out without you wanting them to disclose. And you have to decide what this person's role is in your life. So the psychologist is really good about teasing that out. You're going to have to figure out how to explain to the baby or babies where they came from. I think we're really fortunate now. There are lots of books, or lots of resources, or even children's books that you can read to them from the time they're born that explain all of this. And I think those of you who are already parents, Ron, probably you've had that experience. You know that there's a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources out there which are wonderful, but it's still something you have to explain, and they're not going to be the same as every other kid on the block. And that's wonderful, but that's something that you have to think about how you're going to navigate. So with that, I just wanted to open it up to questions about the process, anything medical, anything you want to know. Yes?
So if we were to start with you, to your first point, would you then work with us to then find the legal, right? The
Yes.
legal side of things,
Yes.
is that right? You would then do a referral or something like that, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah, you know, there aren't that many, so not every lawyer knows what is involved in this process, and you really have to go to the people that do this full time. There aren't that many people that do this, but the people that do it are wonderful, and in Chicago, at least, we're very fortunate to have several very good lawyers that work exclusively with third-party reproduction, egg donors, surrogates, and yes, so we can certainly do that, and also find the surrogates. So we work with several agencies very closely. I guess, you know, the issue is you can't find everything in one place. It doesn't exist. So there's really, as I see it, 4 parts. There's the egg donor, the surrogate, the legal, and then the sort of coordination, putting it all together, kind of the mixer, the chefs, right? So we're the chefs. But we'll screen, so even if you have a surrogate and you go to a surrogate agency, you still need someone to screen the surrogate to make sure, what if her uterus, you know, has been damaged through a previous pregnancy? What if she can't carry a pregnancy? What if she now has high blood pressure and it's really risky for her? Things like this. So you really want a doctor to do that part of it. It doesn't have to be us, but it has to be someone. So we can do that part of it, and we can do, you know, we have egg donors ready and waiting to be selected to donate their eggs. And the other parts are really fairly straightforward. The legal, you know, you just need to spend the time and the money, but there are really good people out there. So, other questions? Yes?
What is your success rate with matching your clients with a potential egg donor of their choice? In other words, if you have a client not find a donor that they wanted, and if that happens, I mean, is there like some, I hate to sound so transactional, but is like a refund or different?
Okay, so yeah, no, that's a really good question. So a lot of agencies, you kind of pay them up front. With us, you would have a consultation, you know, no-cost consultation, and then Vicki runs the whole egg donor program. So what you would do is you would meet with her, you would look at our available donors. No money exchanges hands until you've picked an egg donor that you think works for you. If you don't find an egg donor, so I think the answer to your question is, kind of depends how selective you are. And the more selective you are, the more difficult it is, obviously, to find the right egg donor. We have a fairly wide selection, but, you know, everyone's looking for different things, and if you don't find what you're looking for with us, we certainly have other egg donor agencies that we work with. And this happens all the time, and we have very good relationships with other local and national agencies. So for example, we have, some people want a Jewish egg donor, for example. We work with an organization called the Jewish Blessing, and you know, so forth. So certain ethnicities are a little bit more hard to come by, and so we sometimes need to look outside of even Chicago to find that. So yes, and the nice thing is for us that if you, 5 minutes, okay. If you pick a donor with us, she's already been medically screened. If you go to an egg donor agency, she hasn't been screened for egg quality and ovarian reserve. We already have done that all before we even present the donor to you. But if you, let's say you don't find a donor that's right for you with us, no problem. We'll refer you to other places to look, and then that donor that you pick will then come to us. We'll do the same screening as if she were one of our donors and be very honest and upfront with you. Yes, we think this is a good donor, or no, we think that you could, you know, have a higher pregnancy rate if you use someone else. I mean, our bottom line is we want you to be successful, and we're very eager to do that. And if that means, you know, saying no and being more selective, we're happy to do that. And that's also why we only accept about 4% of the donors. But yes, I mean, yes, you can always look beyond us, and we can, you know, we can work with donors from other agencies. That is no problem at all. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have a guarantee or package program also for attempts?
We do. We do. It usually doesn't make sense for you to use it because our success rates are so high that you end up overpaying by getting the insurance. But we do, and we have, and I just feel like, you know, like, to be totally honest, it's yeah. If you really are risk averse, then yes. But the success rates are so high that it's such that it doesn't really make sense to avail yourself of that. But yes, we do.
Because your screening process, the high quality.
Okay. Both, yeah. But if you want to do that, and if you want to guarantee, you know, basically like a pregnancy or your money back, now that's for the egg donor fees and the cycle fees, not for the surrogate. You have a separate arrangement with the surrogate, and you know, if she goes through the preparation, then there is some money involved in doing that, and also the legal fees on the surrogate end. You kind of have already spent the money, but the surrogate is usually not the limiting factor. It's usually the egg donor. So yes, we do absolutely have a plan for you, and if that's something you'd want to avail yourself of, we absolutely could. In good conscience, I can tell you don't usually need it, but yes, it's available. Other questions? We have like 1 minute, so. All right, thank you. If you want information, we have a booth here. I'm happy to get you information. We're right in the hall. Thank you so much.